The biggest heroes come from the smallest of places. Noble patriots from the patchwork of America, rising from the heartland, flyover states, and small towns. Heroes willing to give the ultimate sacrifice for the freedom of others. This was the life of Corporal John Bishop, as told by the ones that knew him best.
John was born in Batesville, Indiana, in 1984, and we lived at the time in Versailles, Indiana. And then when he was a year old, I took a job with the State Board of Health, and we started moving around. And he was raised, for the most part, here and there.
John was an awesome kid. I mean, he was always kind of this tall, lanky kid. He was always fun to be around. I mean, he always liked to make people laugh. He was a good kid, though, all the way around. Sometimes he could have done better in school, but, that's okay, too. He still did okay.
One thing I remember about him is eating breakfast with him every morning before the bus. He was always smacking his lips and eating with his mouth open, and that's one thing I remember about him. He was very high energy, he's very outgoing. He almost always had a smile on his face.
He would change clothes 5 or 6 times a day because whatever character he decided he was at that moment, that's what he put on. Ninja, a cowboy, it didn't matter. He was everything. When he got a little bit older, he'd dye his hair, bleach his hair, anything to be different. He was so funny. He was a character.
John went to his prom with 2 different women, and they were both okay with it. And I never quite figured out, but that's just how he was. It wasn't just the women. Everybody wanted to be around John. Everybody liked being around him. He just had that personality where people were drawn to him. And we knew that even before he was a teenager, even when he was a child, people were just very drawn to him and just liked being around him.
He spent his junior year in Versailles, Indiana, but then he actually moved back home with me in his senior year and graduated from North High School in Columbus. One thing he really loved to do was imitate people, and he was very good at it. But then he loved riding horses. I've got several pictures of him on horses. Him and his buddy Joey built a bike, and him and his buddy Jason, because all through school from kindergarten there was John, Joey, and Jason all through school, and they stayed friends and close all through high school even. And they still, the boys still come to his ride every year, and, they were all very close.
When he got out of high school, he went straight in the Marine Corps, or almost straight in the Marine Corps. And so he had to grow up fast. He was already a good young man, but they turned him into a Marine very quickly.
He kind of got the bug when I went in. From the time I came home on leave after boot camp, he always wanted to wear my outfits and uniforms, and of course he was into the guns and stuff before that, but that was when he really kind of started focusing on the Marine Corps.
Every time Tyson would come home, John would try his uniforms on, the whole bit, the hat, the whole bit. He wanted to be a Marine. And then when he was between his junior year and senior year, 9/11 happened. He decided that was it. He was going to be a Marine. And I tried to talk him out of it. I said, anything but a Marine, because I knew. And he said, nope, I have to be a Marine, because he'd always wanted to be a Marine like his brother.
That's something he took very seriously when he transitioned to a Marine. He was very proud of that. And you could tell it in his essence that he was proud of it, that's something he worked very hard for, and he accomplished it.
I knew John as a little kid, and then when he got from boot camp and come home and Well, his dad said, I want you to sign him up to the Legion, Chico, and I got him signed up for the Legion, and then I met him when he was in the Marines, and we had a party. They had a party for him up here at our Legion here in Versailles, and I knew him with his brothers and them, and they would keep me informed different things. Yeah.
My name is Jonathan Buckle. I was born and raised in Ridgely, Maryland, and currently living in Cambridge, Maryland.
My name is Benjamin Long. I'm from Alabama. I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Chris Grant from Decatur, Alabama.
I'm Jeremy Ramirez. Was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and live in Alabama now.
My name is Joe Muslin. I'm from Susanville, California, and I currently live in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
He's the most badass Marine I've ever met. He didn't take no crap from nobody. He stood up for what he believed in, and he had no regrets on any decision that he ever made.
His official billet was a squad leader for the machine gun section, but the leadership we had as our section leader, which is the guy that's in charge of all the machine gunners, he even would default to John as far as for advice or just his subject matter expertise, and that was bar none. He took a lot of pride in his job specifically, and he went to great lengths to make sure that everything that he could impart on us as far as something that might keep us alive, some kind of little golden nugget of wisdom that if he thought that it would help us somehow, that he would do whatever he could to help make that a lasting impression of whatever he was trying to teach us.
So when it was just us hanging around with each other, he was a big jokester, and he knew how to make bad situations good. But then when it came to actually teaching, he would flip that light switch and become the sturdy professional that anybody would want to get taught from. And he had the good mix of humor and knowledge that would just make learning from him a blast.
We were machine gun instructors at Battle Skills Training School, and we taught personnel other than grunts how to do grunt stuff and machine gun ranges and what things they were gonna do when they deployed.
I met John right before he PCS'd to Camp Lejeune, so he was with 3-1. I met him through a mutual friend of mine who was also in 3-1. Met him real briefly, and then when I checked in at 2-9, he checked in literally the same day as I did.
I met him in a little tiny room at the French Creek Barracks. We all had to state our name and where we're from, and it's real nerve-wracking being a junior Marine meeting your senior Marines. But that was the first time I met him.
He was professional. Whenever it was time to work, it was time to work. When it was time to play, it was time to play. He was very knowledgeable. He knew what he was doing. He knew the machine guns. He knew the Marine Corps, and he loved machine guns.
I remember one day I was over at his house, and we were joking around, and I told him, man, I really love that shirt that you're wearing. And he took it off and gave it to me. And I kept telling him I didn't want his shirt, but he said I only wore it once, and you like it, and probably look better on you, so go ahead and take it.
He didn't take the burden of leadership lightly, like a lot of people do. He really believed in doing the best he could for the people that were under him, equal to him and even above him. So, to sum that up, he carried himself like a man.
He kind of didn't really fear anybody. He was kind of intoxicating to be around, so he was a good friend.
When I first met him, I was going through a real rough spot in my personal life, and seeing the way he was with his son definitely helped me try to be a better father.
He was definitely someone you could confide in. If you ever had an issue, a problem, he'd take care of it.
Every time we'd walk through these little villages, you would just see groups and groups of kids come out and swarm us, because where we were at, they'd never really seen Americans that weren't actively fighting the Taliban. So they didn't really have a lot of face-to-face time with us. And I just remember every time we would go through there, his call sign was Billy Bob while we were over there, because, you know, we called him a redneck, and that he took to it. You know, that was just how he was. And the kids would always come out and yell Billy Bob because they loved him. Every time they would swarm him and you know, ask him for water, or, you know, pens, pencils, something to write. These kids love stuff to write and draw with because they didn't have anything, you know. And I remember the first time that I had gone through that village after John had died. We were walking through and the kids swarmed us, and you could just see this look of confusion on their faces because he was a pretty tall guy and he's hard to miss. And they came out saying, you know, Billy Bob, and they had their hands up like this, kind of, you know, phrasing it as a question. And we had our interpreter, or Terp, as we called him, kind of break it down for him as far as to what happened, and all of them bursted out crying. And I mean, these are kids that had no loyalty to him. They didn't know him other than seeing him, but that kindness, that compassion that he had, that he just, I mean, it just radiated off the guy, that you could just tell he really believed in what he was doing, and he made other people believe too, even when, you know, we didn't want to or care to. And just seeing how, I mean, these Afghanis were just tore up, you know, it spoke volumes for the kind of guy he was.
He was deployed to Iraq the first time in early 2004. And he did, I believe it was a 9-month tour in Iraq the first time. That tour was a little rough on John, but, you know, we tried to be supportive, tried to make his transition back into civilian, or not civilian life, but back home as best we could, or help him with that as best we could. And he was home less than a year and got redeployed to Iraq again.
He was never a Marine when he came home. He was never a Marine. He didn't want to be treated like a Marine. I think it was a cover-up, you know, because he had seen so much over there. And he didn't want anybody talking about it. He wanted to just laugh and have fun and forget it while he was home. But the boys will tell you, the Marines will tell you that he was stationed with and fought with and stuff, that he was a totally different man with them. And, you know, he took his responsibilities very serious. And he was always the point man. They said, you know, when he was on every conflict and every tour, he was always the point man. And they'll tell you, you know, just what kind of a strong personality he was. But, you know, we never saw the Marine side of John. He was always funny and acting silly when he got home.
It was hard on him, both them tours. I mean, because, you know, they see things that most of us can't even imagine. And it was hard watching my baby brother go through that. But, you know, we tried to be supportive and try to just be there for him as best we could. And one of the things that they did when he was in Iraq in 2007, when the Marines took the city of Fallujah, his company actually took the west flank of that city. And that was a pretty tense couple weeks because he couldn't contact us, obviously. And so that was a pretty worrisome time for the family to watch him go through that. Then he wasn't deployable for a while. And then he went to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. He transferred there. And he was doing really good there. And he was at the end of his first 4-year contract. And he told me that he was thinking about getting out, wanted to be a conservation officer. I don't know for sure what his decision-making system was, but he decided to stay in, sign another 4-year contract. And he did that. And then it wasn't long after that he maybe a couple years, that is when they sent him. He got his deployment papers to Afghanistan, and he knew that deployment would be different than the two in Iraq. He just seemed bothered by it. It's kind of hard to explain, But, the other ones, it's just something that he did. He knew it was going to be rough, but, it was just something that he's a Marine, that's what they do. But this one it was very different. He acted very different before he left, and he was bothered by this deployment.
When John was sent to Afghanistan, he was there approximately 6 weeks, and they were going from door to door hunting insurgents.
They were traversing the streets, and John was point man. So he comes to the corner of this building, and the second behind him come around, went across the street, and when John went to traverse the street is when the Taliban attacked him.
I remember hearing over the radio that we had a Marine down, and they needed to get Doc over there immediately. And then it went from that to we heard the traffic said basically keep Doc in place, keep him where he's at, because we're still taking, at the time that the patrol had been taking enemy fire.
That's when John was shot, and he was shot and killed. He was actually shot through where there's no body armor on the sides here, because the body armor covers the front, and he was shot through here, and it hit his heart and killed him. That's what killed John.
Captain Acom called everybody in formation or in a school circle or whatever, and he was like, "We lost another Marine today." And we're all just like, everybody just complete silence, put their head down. And he said, "We lost John Bishop today during the memorial," and I was bawled like a baby. I can never cried so hard in my life. My friend Omar Butler, he was also a machine gunner, real close to Bishop. We held each other for hours, just bawling. They didn't let neither of us patrol for the next couple days. It was probably the worst day of my life, was losing Bishop.
There's a lot of things I'd like to talk to John about and tell him. I definitely wish I could tell him I love him again. That was the last thing I got to say to him.
I could point on a map of chronological events in the Marine Corps for me and show you the Marine that I was before I knew him and the Marine that I became from knowing him.
He's the reason why I'm still in the Marine Corps. It's men like him and all the other Marines that we lost and sailors we lost on that deployment and other deployments that make me want to do this forever. And I tell him thank you, and I tell him, like I'm always gonna be telling your story no matter what.
We were in California training for CAX right before my first deployment, and if you met this guy Daniel Serp, you would know. It's just funny. He's a character, and I found this rock that looked just like his head. It was perfect, and I drew this face on it, put a stupid smiley face on it, question mark in between his eyes. Because Serp, his last name is SRP, and he has no vowels, so what's wrong with him? So we got this rock, we put him on, there was a post, and I put, "Serp, this is what you're gonna be doing all deployment." So I put his face on a post. Well, our platoon sergeant at the time, Gunny Ross, didn't like it. So he called Bishop over, and he's like, what is this face paint rock bull crap, yada, yada, yada. And, Bishop came over to me and he said, "All right, well, here's your rock." He got Zach Ellington to paint a face on it and put a serial number, and then I had to carry it the entire time I was in CAX. So I kept it in my cargo pocket or my backpack or anywhere I went. I had to take it with me. And there was multiple times that I tried burying it, I tried throwing it. No matter what I did with it, somehow it ended up back on my possession. He said, "You're keeping this all the way through CAX." I was like, So I tried tossing it right before we got on the bus as we were leaving. Somehow I got on the bus, he checked all my serialized gear, and there it was in my bag. I was like, I just threw it off the bus. How'd you do that? And then we get to the airport, right before I get on the plane. I leave at the airport, get on the plane, he checks all the serialized gear. He's like, where's your rock at? I tossed it. We're leaving California. You said I don't have to have any more. He's like, we're still in California airspace. So he's like, look in your backpack. Open it. There it was. I was like, man, you went through that much effort for me to keep this stupid rock on me with a face paint on. I'm gonna keep this thing forever. So I took it on deployment with me. And that's basically the only thing that I have left of Bishop. That's the only thing I got from him. And the significance of the rock, later down the road in Sangin, we had a nice little R&R rest period. And Corporal Tate, Jacob Tate, he found a little rock, face painted on it, serial number. He's like, you still got that rock Bishop gave you? I'm like, yes, Corporal. And he gave me this little rock. I was like, Tate, I don't want that. Don't give me that. It's bad juju. And he's like, keep it. And it's your serialized gear. Every time I check it, you're gonna have it on you. I was like, damn. So I looked at my buddy at the time. I was with Sir, talking to him. I was like, man, I don't like this. Well, he actually passed away and sang, and he got blown up. So that's the only thing that I have left of Tate. So the two of the best machine gun squad leaders we had, Bishop and Tate, the only thing I have left is a stupid rock with a face painted on it with a serial number. So every year, the first year I came down here, it's kind of ironic that his gravesite's a stone. So we went down a little creek behind the park down there, and I found a little rock. We all took part picking out a rock, face paint on it, and put it at the gravesite now. And every year I carry around a marker, and before we go for the ride, I repaint the face on it because it's fade. So yeah, that's all I got left.
John's memorial ride is always the first weekend of September. It always coincides with the date of his death.
I don't know who first come up with the idea to do the memorial ride for John, but it seemed appropriate. He was very much into adventurous stuff where, he loved to ride motorcycles and, ride horseback and hunt and fish and stuff like that. And so it just seemed appropriate. Plus we like to ride, so it was something the family could get into. And now we are getting ready to have his 5th ride this year. And we're kind of getting in this transition thing where we want to get away from a memorial ride into a celebration of John ride.
I believe we should be celebrating John's life, which is what we do, because, he lived a very full life. Everybody loved him.
Just his life, his energy. He was a great guy. He was a great father. He was an awesome brother.
He made it so easy to love him. But he was a great man. Even beyond that, he was a great father. He was a great husband. He was an awesome brother.
Everybody's said a lot of stuff, celebrate about John, and they're all right. We should all celebrate the man he was and his life, but also his humor. He wouldn't be up for all the depressing and crying and mourning and all that. He'd want us to have a good time.
He would want people to not be sad and feel sorry for themselves.
John was a good friend. He's the kind of guy that would always stick up for you.
Everybody knew him. He would just glow.
He'd always laughed about everything.
He was literally the type of friend that would give you the shirt off his back.
Most people know his story of how he died and, that sacrifice, which was great, but there's so much more to John than just that.
Thank you, John. And I miss hearing Grandma Nana. I'm hungry.
Thank you, John.
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 Thank you, John. Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John.
Thank you, son. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.